All right. Greetings. Back to Black Bear News, where everything is connected. Yeah, more time issues. Interesting. All right. I don't know. Is my check? This is a with my mind in the beginning of the show. Very frustrating. Very, very frustrating. All right. So today was a good show, right? I think the feedback I'm getting is that the show. Good to see you all. We're live on Rockfin. Hello, Rockfin. We are here. And we'll be, exclusively on Rockfin in a little bit. I did get an after hours tip from Laura Lambie or Lamb. Lori Lamb. Sorry. She said yesterday was such an interesting live stream. We're live on Callin too. And we got platforms. And very scary and clicks and static. Oh jeez. That is so weird. I don't know what's happening. I feel like it's like StreamYard is being lame. Is it better now? I don't know what's going on. Is StreamYard being lame? Scratchy static. I'm sorry about the sound issues. Boo. It's better now? Okay. Yeah. Well, let's hope this doesn't continue. Stupid says, I don't care what's happening in China. We have our own problems in the States, and I certainly don't trust what I see on that television. Okay. I mean, I guess Colin is good sound wise. Well, Colin, I'm not going through the same apparatus for Colin. Colin is just taking my voice straight off straight out of the air. So Colin has a different parameter. So that's good. If anything, actually, if my videos go down or something goes wrong with the sound or something like that, if my videos go down, you can always find my shows on Colin and you can listen to them as a podcast. Well, okay, so sure, maybe you don't trust what you see on TV, and that's fair. That's fair. But what's concerning to a lot of people, I think, is that several people have intimated, and we have, you know, we have verifiable fact that, you know, some of the things over the last 2 years that were done in Western countries were modeled on what was going on in China. And what the fear is that China is basically a testing ground for what, you know, what is going to happen in the rest of the world, right? As far as like a, you know, the future looking very Orwellian, like 1984, you know, everybody is, you know, or you could pick another classic sci-fi futurist book where everybody is highly controlled, right? Human beings are highly controlled by authoritarian governments. So, you know, I understand if that's your view, but I mean, I'm bringing this to you kind of in the with that lens, through the lens of, you know, they're saying, you know, right now the Western media and other people are looking at China and going like, oh my God, what are they doing? But as I pointed out in the Guardian article the other day, they tried to actually make it seem like, well, this is just, you know, they're just doing stuff because of COVID, right? There is an element, you know, and also there's verifiable fact that Fauci based his lockdown policies on basically on what was going on in China. So if you look at it through that lens, it's very important. You know, what's going on in China is very important. Stupid says, listen, it's probably true what's happening in China, but America's being ripped apart. We certainly can't help China if we can't help ourselves. Well, I mean, I guess, you know, and that's kind of what I'm saying anyways. It's like, yeah, sure, America's being ripped apart, but what's the eventual outcome? Of the, you know, of the ripping apart? Where do we go? What's the next step? Well, here, you know, and a lot of people are very afraid that, you know, that this will be the next step. And this is from China. I mean, they're going, there's no abating from the Chinese government. There's no letting up. There's no slowing down for going whole hog and, you know, full speed ahead with their Chinese, with the zero COVID policy, and finding reasons to send people to. This is a quarantine camp being built in China, 246,000 beds. 246,000 beds. China is becoming a giant prison on a scale the world has never seen before. And why? And why? I mean, I think it's, I don't think anybody really wants to be here. I don't think people want to be in these are quarantine camps. Exactly. This is not, you know, bad housing. This is quarantine camps, and this is vast, and this is pretty wild. Pretty wild. This shows that they're not backing down unless the people do something about it, right? They're kind of, it's like you had this in Australia and you had this in Europe and in other places where they were like, we're going to do these things, you know, this is what we're doing next, right? Deal with it. And you do that until people go, hey, no, thank you. And I mean, that's a good question, Gene. Are we sure those are camps? You're right. You got to take these at face value, but they seem to be, you know, there's lots of video and lots of pictures coming out of people, you know, walking into quarantine camps, lining up, you know, for COVID tests and PCR tests. And there's also a video that I wanted to play the other day of people living on the street streets in China looking like streets in Los Angeles. Why? Because their app, their social credit score, their score turned to yellow, and therefore they can't shop, they can't go into stores, they can't go on trains, they can't actually participate in public life. And I don't know how you turn your app from yellow back to green or whatever it is, but they're basically just like they're stuck, right? They're stuck outside of society, and these people have just sent up. There's just like all these camps set up, down up and down the street, homeless camps of people who have had their apps turned off, their social credit turned off to a point where they can't. They're just. I don't know how you get back from there. I'm not sure. Yes, Bella Lagrisi says I would stay on the street so they can't weld me into my apartment. There you go too. Like what What if they're choosing this? What if they're like, I'm better on the sidewalk than I am in my apartment building? And luckily we do still have some. I was thinking, I guess yesterday about the fact that we, thankfully, thank God, whoever, that we still have the ability to, people do have the ability to fight back, and it's not just on a level of, not on a personal, proletariat level, but we have the ability to fight back, like people in positions of power and professional positions and judges and governors, and right, have the right, still have the potential to go like, nope, I'm not doing this, right? And there's lots of examples of that. I'm not doing this, and that's where the whole control thing kind of falls apart, because if you have enough people in the, not just in the proletariat, not just in the prole class, but in the professional class, all together saying nope, I don't think so, it's hard to implement, it's hard to keep going. But they did, they actually at one time did, or they still are, not did, it's not past tense, still are trying to strip the professional class of the ability to fight back, right? Like there's a law in California saying that doctors have to comply with the official narrative on COVID, or they might be stripped of their license. And that's how you do that, right? If you say like, well, you hold a position of authority, you're in a, you're a professor, you're a doctor, you're somebody, and if you don't toe the line, we're gonna, send you out for people that will toe the line. All right, let's take a call from Lance. What's up, Lance?
Wow, you have hit the nail squarely on the head, man. That's my whole, thesis, one of them. Okay. And I like to, once in a while, I'll come up with something I haven't read about anywhere. And then I read about people that have similar thought that are a lot smarter than me to corroborate it, and I'm like, okay, I'm onto something. Here it is in the 60s, the Berkeley. Speaking about the people that you're talking about, the professional managerial class, the judges and the lawyers, et cetera. And the movers and shakers, the middle management executive, the 10%, right? There's the 1%
sure.
Millionaires and billionaires, the 10% elites, right? So we all know these are all things that people have a framework to talk about. So the 10%, when it was, okay, so a lot of the stuff in the 60s, and this is yet part of my whole other theory, is that the 50s in many ways were a lot more radical, whether it was the Hell's Angels, because the Korean War was such a nasty war compared to World War II. We were supposed to be done with war and depression, then we're right back into Korea. People saw through it. The forgotten war, the bitterness of all that. Blacks came out of World War II. We're going to get our share now. Union stuff, all this stuff can happen. A lot of that from the 50s, the bus boycott, a Brown v. Board, that was all 50s. That was before 1960. Okay, then early 60s, the free speech stuff. Okay, then we had the 60s. What you had was, and you can really go back and look at the older brothers and sisters of kids that were coming up in the 50s versus the ones that had fought, or that were just maybe older brothers, let alone parents. There was a very big split. where it was like, no, man, we're the brave new world, like JFK, the whole jet set, that whole modern era youth and moving forward and rockets to the moon and all that. That was all, a thing. Okay, so the elites, when they were in their 20s and then they went to college and were filled with this stuff, then they went and started making the decisions. And like the millennials now who are demanding stuff in the workplace and getting it. That's just the way it works. And they wanted clean air. They wanted clean water. They wanted no war. The Vietnam War was about 50-50.
Right.
At the end of the war, it was about a 50-50 thing. It was just like now. It's the people that are the loudest. That just like the American Revolution was not fought by the masses rising up. It was a fraction, a third of the people. They had to convince the rabble to go fight this war. It wasn't something that was on their mind necessarily. So all these things happen. Now, what do you have now? I'll make one quick point here, and I'm going to tie in, believe it or not, Mao's Little Red Book. He said this. He said that you have to get the people that are the 10%, the elites. He didn't say the 10%. He said revolutions can start from the proletariat. The first turn of the century Russian Revolution, 05, that was academics and elites, I believe, and intellectuals. It could be the proletariat. It could be the elites that they didn't like their taxation of all the wealth they had. It was rich aristocrats that started the revolution in America, really fomented it. It could come from anywhere. But it's got to wind up being embraced by the 10%, because those are the people that are going to carry out the orders of the people or the powerful or whoever it is. They're the ones that are going to wind up running the show no matter what. Yeah. And so what you had in the 60s, 70s, early 70s was those elites wanted change. They wanted clean air. They wanted clean water. They wanted civil rights. They really wanted, even after the riots, we're going to help black people. Now it's like, get rid of the homeless so I can go gentrify. This is what the left wants now. Now the elites are your enemy. You're not going to get them to buy in because you got second generation suburban. My grandparents now came from the suburbs. I was suburban. I grew up in a upper middle class suburbia, and everybody's parents came from the city. And it was that mentality was still there a little bit, understanding urbanness, even if you fit. Now you've got my parents and grandparents are all suburbanites. They've got that complete cocoon-like thing, like everybody says. Small town, great. Rural, fine. Inner city, great. But suburbia is where you go to rot. Your brain rots. It just does. And that's what we have now. That's who's running the show. Second generation suburbanites who have no clue, even if they wanted to empathize. They haven't even rubbed up against a poor person. I went to school with super rich. I'll finish with. I went to school with the richest in the city, just a regular middle class, Norman Rockwell middle class home. But I happened to go to the school district a mile away. I was on the border of a lower middle class kind of school district. And most of the kids, half of them or more, were from the richest neighborhood in the city. They all went to public school. That neighborhood, it never went down. It's all like kind of mini mansions, beautiful neighborhood. Those kids all go to private school now. I guarantee it. None of them go to the public school for decades already. And that's what you have now. So the people that are running the show have no empathy. They have no connection to the poor intellectually or physically. And that's who's running the show. So instead of getting the elites to back it, you're going to have to fight the 10% elites. It's going to have to be all pros this time. I don't see that. I agree with what you're saying. Yeah. I just don't see it happening.
Well, thanks for the call, Lance. I appreciate you. And good points. I really agree with you. Like there's it's like the wealth gap. There's a wealth gap, an education gap, and there's a gulf between the people who run, who are in the managerial class and the people who are in the working class, right? And so that's why it's, things like the Bernie Sanders movement and things that are, rooted in like workers movement or working class, movements. It's hard to convince people because it's so easy to brainwash the people that are in the managerial class that like, oh, they're just, they're all crazy Trumpers, they're all, Bernie Sanders, they're all like white racists, they're all these bad, because they're removed from actually like caring about, they're fine, they're comfortable, they can do, and they just turn on CNN to get their daily feed of like what's reality. But thanks, Lance. I'm going to let you go. But thanks for your point. I appreciate it. I'm going to go back to showing some other things on Twitter. And there also was, the mindset. I mean, we were much more left leaning, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, because that was just where things were going politically, right? There was from FDR even all the way through Nixon, things that Nixon said and things that Nixon brought to bear in his policy were like so far left of where we are now. We've really moved, way to the right, very far to the right. What people think of as democratic policies or left-wing stances are so right-wing. Proletarian, yeah. There's other names for the masses, the people, the whatever. The plebes is another word. Anyways. Slava is asking me if I can make the connection between the internment camps and the Chinese community. Well, I I think it's fairly obvious. I don't know. I'm not really sure what the question is about. I'm not sure. It's getting cold in China. More on China. It's getting cold in China. And yet people have to line up in the snow for their daily PCR test to keep the QR code green. You got to keep the QR code green or you'll end up living on the street because it's yellow. How many people die from the flu this year from this crazy COVID zero policy? I mean, this is wild. This is, I don't know about the sound on this, but I don't need the sound. I have to say, this video doesn't look concocted. It could be for something else. It could be, this could be people lining up for some other reason, but it looks, it doesn't look like it makes a lot of sense. Hey, everybody, let's all get together. This is the other, a lot of people pointed out the weird things about COVID policy back in the day, about some of the things that we're doing with COVID, right? But you have stuff like this happening where, let's everybody get together in a group and go line up outside or it's bitter cold to go take a PCR test to see if you're sick, right? Like, none of this, it just doesn't make any sense. Anyways. I wanted to point out, though, Slava, China is a dictatorship, right? Authoritarian. They call themselves communists, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're practicing communism as it was meant to be, right? It's just a name. It's just a name. It's just a name. And most governments carry out things that seem like they're authoritarian. All governments, the United States government, the Cuban government, the Russian government, the German government, all governments carry out things that look pretty authoritarian and fascist. So, I don't know. My question for you, Slava, is where has communism been allowed to work? Because usually when the people vote for a leader or a party or a system of government that seems to take care of the people, that's when the freedom lovers, the United States, seem to swoop in and go like, no, I think you want our leader. I think you want our fascist dictator leader to take over the country because you guys are enjoying yourselves a little too much. All right. Joseph, we'll take this call from Joseph. America is bougie. That's funny. America is bougie.
Okay.
We keep it bougie.
There's things to click. You have to answer questions to get in there.
Yeah.
Um, the political thing, I only took one political science class in college, and the biggest thing I should say that I took from it, and I was lucky to have a really animated professor, and he pointed out time after time that each right or left, whatever you're going to call right or left, has gone to the extremes in equanimity. In other words, the
Yeah.
right has gone equal to the left and vice versa in all of their views over time. And it takes a really large window to look through to understand the mechanisms to get from the social construct to the industrial construct, because they evolve together. Like you come from rocks and sticks, and the social construct evolves around that mechanism being a norm. And it's
Right.
all separations from the physics of the environment around it. Is that
Hmm.
is there a better way to say that?
No, I mean that sounds about right. You know. Um,
So China's extreme, the prisons, there's opportunity there too. I mean, you could build terraced earthen structures around so much of those things that help people survive,
right.
and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway,
Yeah. Um,
I just but
I don't know. I mean, what's happening? Particularly. I don't. It's a big subject to bite into, like the history of right and left and all that. But like to go back to what's happening in China, like it does seem like uh, it does seem like there seems to like they're really trying out like this new thing. They're like, hey, how about we do it like this, right? When it seemed for a long
it,
time that China was moving towards a more like open capitalist kind of society, right? It did seem that way, right? They were opening
it
up.
did.
People are they seem to be kind of allowing people to just kind of live and let live, right? And there was a growing middle class, and there's a growing capitalism now. But there's just now it's just like, nah, we're going to go in a different direction, which is we're going to weld you into your apartment building.
So it's boundaries. So they're from the top view down.
Right.
You're looking at boundaries colliding, right? Social boundaries, whatever their intent was or is, the boundaries in the physical are much more visible once you introduce capitalism, right? And social separation between rich,
Mm,
middle class, poor.
right.
So I think we're all seeing that and experiencing that from wherever we're sitting.
Right. Right. Well,
And then we have to. So how do we see it the same? I guess how do the people in the streets of China see this problem equally to you and me?
uh,
That's a big question.
yeah. Well, it does seem. Um, I mean, it does seem like they're like, this isn't going to work for us, right? This seems to be a little extreme. It does seem like people are pushing back. It's hard to know
Right.
and it is hard to know what's really happening all the time in China. Right? It's hard to know. It is a valid, statement to say it's hard to know what's real and what's not real about what's
It
going
is
on.
very hard. And
Um,
not sure if tech's helping that.
yeah. But at the same time, it seems like the people there are quite uncomfortable with what's going on. And if you push people, I guess like Russia was a good example of kind of keeping people under lock and key for a long time. But even that crumbled eventually. You can't lock people down for too long. You can't push people that hard, or they do act. Eventually they do go like, nope. But what people are really afraid of, I think, is that they're creating a system that you will never be able to break free from. That eventually there's no, they will lock you down to the extent that like there is no. And this could just be very much like it's very Orwellian, right? There is no escaping these confines, and
No. And
And the people that
I'm
are the people
afraid.
that are in charge, they're the kind of people that are like, ooh, that's interesting, right? Like they're the kind of people that are like, oh, goody Smithers, let's do more of that.
Do you really think so? I mean, is that? I'm sure there's some of those, but aren't there also some that are not like that at all and are just overwhelmed with the situation at
Yeah, no,
hand?
I mean, I think there are people out there that have humanity, but the for whatever reason, like the controllers have control. They have really locked. As even our political class is uh, completely corrupt and completely bought and sold. And I don't think it's that because that's what they all want to do. It's just that they've gotten into this position and then they realized, oh, I'm going to do whatever they tell me to do because XYZ.
And XYZ is number one, economists and other political scientists tell them that these are the things they should do. And they don't know any better. They aren't physicists, they aren't environmental scientists, they aren't agricultural scientists, they aren't, all
Well,
these
you're making
things,
it
right?
you're making it seem kind of like they're taking policy. I'm actually intimating something a little darker, which is like
Right.
you're
And
gonna do
I'm there with you a
you're gonna do the thing.
lot.
You're gonna do the thing, or
I'm there with you.
or you're not gonna have,
I'm devil's advocate here.
or you're gonna have no thing, right? You're gonna do the thing, or you're gonna have
So
nothing.
that's from, is it, I'm saying, is it from just hubris and evil intent, or are they terrified of something?
Right. I mean,
And
it
I
could be
think you
both. It
have
could be a little both. You know.
right, right, right. So I don't know how to go about talking to them because of both of those reasons. But all the millions underneath them, I think we have a shot at really communicating with people that aren't in that position.
Yes. Yes. And
That position, though, I don't think.
yeah. Well, I do see glimmers of I see glimmers of hope. I see over the last year, there's been a whole lot of things that have been revealed. It's difficult for the political class to deny the reality of what people are experiencing, right? Because people are because people are able to right now have access to alternative media and have access to people are still able to speak the truth and spread the truth around, right? Um, and when you try to like censor people and shut all that down and shut everybody down, there's enough of a voice out there that people are like, nope, we're not going to do it, and they see that's dangerous. The political class, see that that's dangerous to tread too far in that direction for now. I mean, and so there is a glimmer of hope because the reality is that people are seeing what's going on, and they're pushing back on it, and the political class is kind of walking back here and there. They're choosing their spots, but they're like, oh yeah, we didn't really mean that. Oh, sorry, maybe we should have amnesty, for the things that we have done over the last couple of years, right? I mean,
It is a moving book, isn't it?
you wouldn't put an article out like that unless you knew you did something wrong, right?
Right,
The
absolutely.
Atlantic, and
It's
you wouldn't
cover
write
up,
an
cover
article
up,
with
yeah.
a headline like, "I think it's time for amnesty." Amnesty for what? You're admitting that you did something really wrong, right? So the things you were doing were the wrong things. I don't know. So they know, everybody knows, and it's just like hopefully that tide of truth telling and a recognition and hopefully that continues to rise because it's this is a real we're coming to a real crossroads for sure.
I agree. I would like to see, for all our sakes, if you could somehow, I mean, you have a pretty wide base of viewers. If we could have someone from each of these regions, you know, join one of these call-ins each
Yeah.
time we have, and then we get ground on the ground information and also a flowering connection.
Oh,
of
absolutely.
these kind of things.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, a big reason why I do the show. And it's actually, the show works, more as a forum than it is, I do like sit in front of the camera and say, this is what happened today. Like I do a fair amount of that, or try to, but the show actually works a lot better when it's just people, kind of talking amongst themselves. Right. And it's, the diversity of thought, I think, is important. And I also think the ability to take on a lot of different ideas in the people that watch this show, right, and converse, about whatever's going on. I think that's important, right? We do have people that don't think like, there's a lot of people that don't think like I do. I try not to be such a jerk to say like you're wrong for not thinking like I do. I try not to do that. But we'll all be better off, I think, if we could get into that space where it's like, we're searching and seeking for things that are real, and I don't know. That's just, I'm hoping to just be another conduit. So
I hope so
and
too.
There's got to be a lot of conduits. There's got to be. That's the important thing about this. Is like it's not. It's the fact that there are so many people that are aware of what's going on and have the ability to talk about it, that it kind of overwhelms. It overwhelms the level of propaganda that's going on. It overwhelms the level of, there's a lot of people out there going like, what are you talking about? Everything the government tells me is totally true. And everything I see on CNN is the gospel, right? Like you got to overwhelm that. And I think the truth tellers are doing a good job of that. Anyways.
I think you're right. I think it's just, I look at it like this, or this is the visual from watching everything. It's like we're in a big cauldron and it's being brought to boil and it's a stew. So the things that are the groups of people that have a certain fixed view, they jiggle around in the stew together in a clump, and you've got all these clumps and you got to make the clumps jiggle at the same motion, at least the way they roll around the pot. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
If you're all interconnected enough, we are all interconnected enough in the way we want to jiggle for the whole sake of the pot, or for the pot's whole sake, then it has a lot more rhythm to it, rather than just a random boil.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I hear you.
Thanks for taking the call.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks for calling.
Thanks for doing the show, too.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Good to hear from Joseph. We could do, I'll look into that. I'll see if we can get if I can figure out how to kind of smoothly get a bunch of people all at once on call-in, and maybe we can do more like panel discussion type things, or we can do Zoom or whatever. People have technologies. Max, you said something interesting in the comments. They might figure out that it's better to free Julian Assange than pay the consequences. Well, where did I see that recently? That the New York Times said something about we should all be afraid. Oh man, I had it and I lost it. Where is it? We should all be worried about what's going on with Julian Assange because, freedom of the press is kind of important, right? Just like Ro Khanna, sending a message into the Twitter people. Hey, freedom of speech is kind of important. It's in the Constitution. These are things that are, these are rights that people have, and people expect to live under a system in which those rights are enshrined. They don't, it's not like, well, free speech is cool until, somebody feels threatened. Well, threatened how? Threatened how? I don't know if I can find it quickly enough. I thought it was in here. I thought I had it in my I thought I had it in my feed on Twitter. Anyways, yeah, New York Times recently had a little op-ed or something talking about, oh yeah, maybe we shouldn't do this thing with Julian Assange. Maybe that's not so good because he is a journalist, and so if he goes down, that's a bad precedent for others who are really trying to be journalists, right? I don't know. I had a couple other things to talk about today. Oh, this is Peter Dines. How much ecological destruction takes place just to build these gigafactories? Pointing out like Elon Musk has his hands in a lot of that guy is everywhere. A lot of people are a little worried that Elon Musk is everywhere, and that he also might be the arbiter of free speech on the internet. That he might be one of the largest arbiters of free speech on the internet. How much ecological destruction takes place to build these gigafactories? Tesla cleared more than 160 hectares or 395 acres of forest to construct its battery hole. Battery hole. Never mind the worldwide mining operation. Remember always, we coup who we want to coup. That's a quote from Elon Musk. We coup who we want. I think he was talking about Bolivia. So, I love free speech. Free speech is great. I don't know. Somebody was saying that maybe Elon Musk yesterday was free. Maybe. Free speech is great. We coup who we want to coup. Right? But don't forget, free speech is awesome. But if you have the wrong government, if you have a government that doesn't like my mining operation or doesn't like US, US interests being all up in their policy, we might have to coup who we want. Oh, well, yeah, stupid. Aren't we all delusional? A little delusional. I think the world should be one big happy place. I mean, I agree. This climate activist was jailed or sentenced to jail for a long time for blocking the Harbor Bridge in Sydney. Sentenced to 15 months in prison with a non-parole period of 8 months. Human rights advocates labeling the punishment as disproportionate. Yeah. They don't like climate protesters. They don't like people shutting things down. They like you agreeing with what they want to do about climate change or not do about climate change. But when you're actually like, no, no, I think I have, I think I have an idea that maybe what we're doing is bad for the planet, and I want to show my disapproval. I want to protest in the way I want to protest, and I might be shutting business as usual down for a little while. They really don't like that. They really don't like that. Yeah. I don't know. Slava, it's cool. You can think whatever you want to think, but if you want to get CNN news, just go watch CNN. I mean, if you want people to agree with your view on the, if you want people who are in agreement with your view on the world, but I'm just offering like constructive some help here. Like, I don't think you're going to change anybody's mind. And if you're here, I mean, you sound like you're here with a big old American flag, waving we're American exceptionalists over here And you better get on board, buddy. I don't know, you know. I don't know. Some people seem to like it, Slava, which does sound like, I don't know. It sounds like something, doesn't it? Some people seem to like the show, so I mean, you can get up in here and get all, you know, bent out of shape. I don't know why you have time for this. I don't really understand why you have time for this. I don't have time for getting bent out of shape at people that don't agree with me. I just don't have time. The fact that you do is interesting. All right. Just a couple more things, guys. I wanted to cover this yesterday, and I saw that. Well, I'm gonna. You know what? I don't know. Well, no, I'll play it. Apparently, Israel didn't have. No, I don't know. I mean, on some levels, yeah. Actually, I agree with you, Slava. On some levels, I agree with you, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have really time. I don't know if I have time for this. World misled by falsified data. Turns out Israel had no effective monitoring system for adverse reactions to the COVID vaccine in 2021 when the world relied on their data to guide vaccine policy. So this is an interesting news story. This is a 9-minute video. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but we'll play a little bit of this. And we'll end with this. But this is interesting.
Quite known that Israel was Pfizer's laboratory. Pfizer's request to the FDA to approve the booster was to a great deal based on the Israeli data. But what the world did not know was that actually for the entire year in which almost the whole population was vaccinated, 2 or even 3 doses, Israel actually did not have any functional monitoring system. The monitoring was really dysfunctional.
I have all this information on my cell phone, not just because I'm a minister, but because we have a centralized digital system and a centralized digital data bank that allows us to have an updated information on the hour from all the different HMOs, from all the different vaccine stations, from all the different hospitals directly into the Ministry of Health. This is just one example.
The Ministry of Health the whole time just lied, not just to the Israeli population, but also to the FDA. And many researchers actually were very, very concerned.
That's it. We'll end it right there, but that's very interesting, isn't it? Because they were relying on this data to make... Yes. No, I won't. Stupid. I won't. No, but they were relying on data, right? They were relying on data, and then they were like, we weren't monitoring. Oh, oops! You know, it's always a big like whoops. But I will say, they're saying that they had lax monitoring of data around adverse reactions to the vaccines, but we actually did see some of the first more comprehensive reports about what was going on coming out of Israel. So there were some people, you know, paying attention, right? There were independent doctors and some groups that were giving, you know, putting out studies and reports. You know, actually some of the first studies that were showing, you know, some of the effectiveness were coming out of Israel. So that's, I don't know. Not the same as adverse reactions, but interesting nonetheless. Coming out of Israel, coming out of like Scotland, coming out of the UK, coming out of places in Europe, some places were going like, here's some data. Famously, was it Scotland? I think it was Scotland. They or maybe Ireland. They pulled down. They were giving the data, and then people were like looking at the data, and they're like, this doesn't look very good, for what you're saying is happening. And then they're like, well, we're not going to show the data anymore. I don't know. All right. Well, that does it for me, guys. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I know we were kind of all over the place today, but I don't know. I thought we had some good conversations about what was going on. And thanks, Rockfinners. Oh, I forgot to tell you all I got a tip after hours. Oh, and I already told you that. I'm going to check the coffees. Almost forgot to do that. I got so wrapped up in the conversation. Didn't even check the coffees. But it's a good way to support the channel. buymeacoffee.com/blackbearnews is good. And Rockfin tips always kindly accepted. You can also support me on Patreon. So thank you all. Appreciate you. I'll see you all tomorrow at the regular time of 12 p.m. Sorry for the lateness today. 12 p.m. Pacific Standard. And until next time, peace.